hit enemies directly in the feet, and it gives you much more control over where you send them compared to stock. This can easily be combined with follow-up air shots, which are now much easier to hit, and I'd be lying if I said that reliable air shots weren't one of the main reasons I use this thing. When you start using the lock and load long enough, your brain begins to turn into a US-grade anti-air cannon, and Trojans or bombing soldiers become easy picks rather than a difficult matchup. Now that I've discussed why I think the lock and load is a valid side grade, what kinds of situations does it work best in? In my experience, the situation that I found the most success with is when offensively pushing into large open areas. In these scenarios, enemies often have the most freedom to move around, and you'll often be fighting people at much longer ranges. Losing the area denial ability of rollers hurts when defending choke points, but when pushing open areas, it's a much easier pill to swallow. Playing offensively is also where you're most likely to find the most sentries, and while stickies can help with ones placed around corners, the lock and load is particularly helpful with ones on long sight lines. Needing only 2 pipes to take down sentry often just feels plain unfair for the engineer. Now, whilst using the sticky bomb launcher is a fine choice on maps with lots of enclosed spaces and choke points, I find it doesn't really highlight the advantages of the weapon, as the scenarios where stock stickies are best also happen to be where the normal grenade launcher shines. The lock and load still serves a valid purpose for the longer ranges where stickies can't reach, but I find some of Demoman's other choices can make for a more interesting playstyle. It's especially fun to pair with the Quickie Bomb Launcher, as it can work as an effective combo starter as well as a reliable way to finish off enemies hit by a pipe. I won't deny that this does significantly hamper your sustained DPS compared to stock, meaning it's harder to act as one of your team's power classes. However, I think leaning into this pick demo mentality can be a genuinely effective playstyle that essentially turns you into an explosive sniper. In fact, outside of classes like Spy or Sniper itself, this loadout gives some of the best opportunities to punish snipers and medics who are otherwise well defended by their own team. However, the gameplay style I really think I see the lock and load least utilized is on Hybrid Knight. I've previously seen it referred to as one of the weakest options for Hybrid Knight,
leaving it easily the weakest option to use for Hybrid Knight play, unless you just really want to get around a sentry.
But in my experience, actually found it an especially strong synergy. It helps alleviate many of the biggest weaknesses as a Hybrid Knight, such as bombing soldiers, aggressive scouts, skilled pyros, and hard-to-reach sentries or snipers. And with the mobility the Tide Turner gives, you can control which fights you take and from what distance, which combined with the lock and load's versatility means you can much more easily create ideal conditions against your target, which, unlike stock, often involves running away or around targets. In this sense, the shield works as more of a utility rather than a direct combat tool, and when you are practically firing pipes 24/7, you're generally limited by reload speed rather than your burst damage output, which makes that lost pipe much more palatable. Throughout most of my gameplay, I prefer to use the Claymore, as the extra charge range allows you to much more easily punish enemies you hit from long range pipes, and successful kills allow you to easily retreat or continue the aggression when needed. Charging with the lock and loadout can negate the downside of the Claymore, and hitting pipes mid-charge is a more viable option due to their increased speed relative to the charge. Now, with all this glazing, I think it's necessary to point out some of the biggest struggles I had whilst using the lock and load. Because all of its stats lean into this all or nothing playstyle, it means you truly have to be locked in and loaded when using it. On days where my aim wasn't feeling as good, it was much harder to get value because every missed pipe served no value whatsoever. Tankier targets, such as heavies, demo knights, and banner soldiers, were particularly tough as you've got no room for error. Many times, even if you channel your inner future sight hit every pipe, 300 damage still won't be quite enough burst damage, and a 4th pill is exactly what you would need to seal the deal. However, in general, I found with all the extra pipes I was hitting with this, it's a trade-off that I was willing to make, especially when good use of Demoman's secondaries can help providing the extra damage or mobility. And finalizing my thoughts on the lock and load, I still wouldn't go as far as to say that the lock and load is inherently better than stock, the Iron Bomber, and in some scenarios, even loose cannon, but that's a topic for another day. I think the lock and load has many genuinely effective use cases, and for a game where you can switch weapons as you please, this is exactly what makes for a good side grade. I really do think the weapon walks a fine line between being either an overpowered or underpowered weapon, and I'm of the belief that almost every balance suggestion I see crosses this line in one way or the other. When doing research for this video, it became increasingly clear that the idea of the lock and load being underpowered has become increasingly rare to the point where I no longer think this is much of a hot topic as I originally thought. Perhaps maybe Valve's actually better at balancing than most people give them credit for, or then again, maybe not. Probably the best balance suggestion I saw was from the Watt, who simply suggested removing the explosion radius penalty. It's a small change, but it recognizes the utility the weapon already serves, and it doesn't overstep. But in my eyes, even if the weapon was to remain in its current state forever, which at this point seems likely, the weapon has already cemented a unique role which isn't matched by any of the other grenade launchers. Above all else, probably what matters most, is that the lock and load is really fun to use. So if you enjoy playing Demoman or Hybrid Knight, and have only ever stuck to the stock or Iron Bomber, I'd really recommend you give it a go. And maybe it'll end up becoming a more permanent part of your weapon repertoire. If you've made it this far, I really want to thank you for watching the whole thing. I've got many more video ideas I plan to make in the future, and hopefully, the editing and gameplay will only get better from here. Subscribe if you want to see more, and if you've got any feedback, you can leave a comment below. Peace.
Engineers are bloodless!